Today's video is sponsored by Realm. Working with SQLite and core data can be complicated and challenging. Realm provides an easy-to-use API for iOS, Android, and cross-platform frameworks which allows the user to persist and query data. Realm also has an exciting new feature which allows your mobile app's database to sync with MongoDB Atlas. There is a generous free tier that covers smaller apps, but for the first 100 users can also redeem $50 worth of credits for the paid tier. Check out the YouTube description for all the links and resources. Before starting with the implementation details, let's go ahead and check out what we will be building in this video. You can see that this is the completed app which manages your tasks. This is already hooked up and integrated with our Realm flexible sync so that it can store information on the cloud. Currently, we have one particular item added, which is clean the car, which has two different nodes attached to it: buy the cleaning liquid and find the hose. But we can go ahead and enter more tasks like feed the rabbit. We can associate nodes with each task. Prepare the hay, clean the container, and so on. We can also delete a particular node, or we can also delete a particular task. When the task is completed, we can simply check mark it, and it will move automatically to the completed section. If we accidentally mark the task as completed, we can always uncheck it, and it will move back to the pending section. You can also mark the task with low, medium, and high, and based on the priority that you're going to assign, the actual medium, low, and high display is going to change. So let's say that if I go ahead and say clean the garage and it is high priority, you can see it is with different color. All the tasks are saved in your database. So if I go to the MongoDB cloud, you can see that our tasks, clean the car as well as feed the rabbit, is saved. And the associated nodes for the feed the rabbit and car, if there are any, are also saved. Great. So this is the application that we'll be building. Let's go ahead and get started. Now that you have seen what we will be building in this video, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, make sure that you're on mongodb.com/atlas/database website. This is where you will log in and create your project and also associate a database and the flexible sync with the project. I'm going to go ahead and sign in, and since I'm already logged in, I will be taken to the home screen. You can see that you can sign in with Google, a GitHub account, or a different URL, username, and password credentials. Currently, you can see that I don't have any projects listed over here, but I can always go and create a new project. Let's go ahead and create a new project. We can provide a name for our project. Let's call it TodoList. Next, you can go ahead and add some other members and set permissions for your project, but for now, I'm just going to leave that blank. You can see that I am the project owner, which is correct. And next, and finally, I can click on Create a Project. Once I create a project, it is going to create a project on the MongoDB Cloud website. And you can see that now my project is created. Next up, I can set up a database. Let's go ahead and click on Build a Database option. You can see that you have several different tiers that you can select from: serverless, advanced, or free. For this example, we are going to use the free database. So go ahead and click on Create button under the free column. In this case, you can select shared, dedicated, serverless. We're already selecting the free tiered over here, and all the default settings should be okay. But if you want to check out some other settings, you can definitely do that. Now finally, go ahead and click on the button, create the cluster. This is going to create a cluster for us. And now we will select the authentication method for our database. Over here, you can select username or password or certificate. I'm just going to, by default, is selected username and password, which is correct. I need to create also the username and password. So let's go ahead and type in the username. You should create your own username. If you want to create or auto-generate the password, you can also click on the button, auto-generate a secure password. And next, we can click on the button, create user. Great. Let's scroll down. Now this is the important part. You can see that over here, it is saying that we have two different ways to connect. We have the local environment or we have the cloud environment. This is what we want. We want the cloud environment. I have already selected the cloud environment. Now I will select by IP list. So it will know that it is me who is trying to connect to the cloud. Over here, you can enter your IP address, or you can simply click on Add my current IP address. Next, we will say Finish and Close, and go to the database. Okay, so now you can see that our database is being set up. That's great. We can browse the collections, but obviously there will nothing be in the database because we haven't really saved anything. Keep in mind that although we have created the database, we have still not configured our flexible sync. In order to configure flexible sync, we are going to go to App Services. So let's go ahead and click on App Services. This is where we will enable the sync, we will create the schema and all that stuff. When you click on App Services, it's going to give you this menu, whether you like to build your own, you like to use Realm real-time sync services, or manage database tables and all that stuff. Let's go ahead and select Build Your Own App and select Next. You can see that by default, it has already selected your main cluster. It already has the name of your application and the deployment model, everything. Now let's go ahead and say Create App Service. Once we click on Create App Service, it's going to set up our app service. And now it's showing us different guides that you can read on your own on device sync, triggers, endpoints, and so on. We can click the button Close Guides and continue with our work. App ID over here is very important. We will be needing that in the future. Let's go ahead and check out a couple of different things. We will start with authentication. If you look at the authentication, there are many different ways of performing authentication. You can email and password, Facebook, Google, Apple. We're going to allow the users to log in anonymously. You can see that currently the enabled is off. So let's go ahead and edit that and just turn it on. Make sure to save the changes. Great. Next, let's go ahead and click on Device Sync. You can see right now we haven't really set up anything. So let's go ahead and say Start Syncing. And we will simply say no thank you and continue to sync. Over here, we have choice of which kind of a sync mechanism we have to use. We can use the partition-based sync or flexible sync. Flexible sync is a little bit easier to use, and this is the forward direction from MongoDB. So we're going to select flexible sync. The development mode, which is currently off. Development mode basically means that whenever we will create the models on our client app, meaning our iOS application, it will automatically be generated into the schema on the server side. Currently, it is off, which is fine because we don't even have an iOS app to begin with. Next up, it's going to allow us to select a cluster. Let's go ahead and open this up. We only have one cluster that we have set up initially. We're just going to select that. Next up, we're going to select queryable fields. This means that anything you want to query on. Right now, we're just going to select ID, which is automatically selected. And finally, we're going to select the permissions. There are many different options. Deny all access, which means the user cannot access anything in the database. User can read all the data. User can read and write all the data. That sounds about right. So let's go ahead and select that. You can see that as soon as we select a certain rule, like user can read and write all data, it is going to create a valid JSON for us and update it. And finally, we can click on Enable Sync button. Yes, we will just go ahead and say Enable Sync. Keeping in mind that right now we don't have any application. Sync is enabled. You can see that you can pause or terminate sync also. But right now, there is nothing to sync. There is no data. There's nothing really going on. So now it is time for us to go and create our iOS SwiftUI application and start working with the Cloud Sync feature, which is flexible sync with MongoDB Realm. Now we can start with integrating our iOS SwiftUI application with the flexible sync. So how can we do that? Well, this is just a very basic application. You can see there's nothing going on. The first thing we need to do is to add the required packages, to add Realm to our application. So let's go ahead and say Realm. We'll select Realm and then add a package. In this case, we're going to select Realm as well as Realm Swift and add them. This is going to take a little bit more time to download and build the application. So let's go ahead and build it. And since this is building for the first time, it's going to take a little bit more than expected, but on the subsequent builds, it will be faster. There we go. Great. The next thing we need to do is we need to set up our Realm Manager. That is going to allow us to configure Realm so that we can use it in our application. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder, and I will call it Managers. Inside over here, I will create a new file, Swift file, and I will call it Realm Manager. Great. First, we will start with importing Realm Swift. Next, I will create a Realm Manager, and I will also make sure that this is using the observable object. You'll see in a moment that why we're using observable object. We will create the app instance. This is the Realm app. And now we can create a static shared instance of our Realm Manager. This means that at a given moment, there will be only one instance of the Realm Manager. Singleton pattern. And just to make sure that other users are not able to create multiple instances of Realm Manager, we're going to make sure that the initializer is private. You can see that when we're trying to build the app instance, it requires an ID. And I told you initially that the ID is important. So we need to go back to our UI over here, and we need to make sure that we get the ID. On the left-hand side, you can see this copy button right next to the ID. And that is what we need to press to get the ID. Great. Now we can simply pass in the ID. IDs are unique per application. So this ID is only for this application, meaning this ID, application 0, and the one that we just selected is for Realm services, which is using flexible sync, and it will be connected to a particular database. Next up, we're going to go ahead and create a function called initialize. This will be an async function and it can also throws. We will also make sure that this function is executed on the main thread, so we will decorate it with the main actor property wrapper. Next thing we need to do is to do perform authentication. If you remember correctly, on the actual dashboard, if you go to authentication, we set up the authentication which is allow the users to log in anonymously. So it has been set up on the dashboard on the app services, but we still have to set up and tell our application that we are setting it up as anonymous. We will call try-await app.login, and in the login for credentials, we can pass anonymous. This is going to return us a user, so we will go ahead and capture that user. That user will be of type user, so we will go ahead and create a user type, as you can see on line number 16. The user instance is marked with publish. This means that whenever the user is initialized, we are going to publish an event that can be captured by the UI. Great. So this means that our initialize function, when it is called, we are simply going to go ahead and enable the authentication. The other thing we need to do is to create the realm object that we can use. So we'll go ahead and create a realm object. The realm object comes in many different flavors. We need to pass in the configuration. Or we can simply create the realm object as it is. When we are using flexible sync, as you can see over here in the device sync that we are using flexible sync, we need to set up subscriptions. Subscriptions are going to allow us to maintain that what part of the database or the models have to be synced to the cloud and what needs to be downloaded from the cloud to our device. Currently, we cannot really set up flexible sync because we don't have any models which are saying that we will be storing that kind of information. We don't have any models that will reflect the structure of our data. So we need to create our models. Those models are going to dictate that what we are trying to save. So let's go ahead and create a models folder. And inside the models folder, I'm going to go ahead and add a new file, and I will call it task. Great. This means that we will be storing task into our database. I will go ahead and create a class called task. But before I do that, let's go ahead and import realm Swift also. Task will be conforming or will be using the type object. And we will also mark this as identifiable. This will allow us to easily iterate over the task when we are displaying it in a list. The first thing we need to create is a primary key associated with each task that we will be storing in our database. I'm going to go ahead and create a key called _ID, which is of type object ID. You can see that we are using the persisted property wrapper and also telling that this is a primary key. Next, we're going to add a couple of different properties, which will include the title as well as is completed. We also want to assign some sort of a priority to our task. Now, the best way to create a priority will be to have an enum. So let's go ahead and create an enum also. I will say priority. That will be a string, case iterable, so we can iterate through the priorities. And we need to persist the enum, so we will also use persistable enum, which is part of the realm Swift. Now we can go ahead and create 3 different priorities for our application, which will be low, medium, and high. After we have created the priority, now we can go back to our task object and create a new property, priority, that's going to save the priority of the task. Great. Now we have our task model completed. This means that we will be saving this task model to our Realm Flexible Sync database, or the database that is using Flexible Sync, and it will be downloaded from the cloud to our local database also, so that we can use it in cases where we are offline. Now let's go ahead and jump back into Realm Manager and configure our subscription options. In order to use subscriptions, we will have to call user.FlexibleSync We're using Flexible Sync configuration because that is the configuration that we are using online. Flexible Sync configuration is a new sync configuration that is added and that allows you to easily create subscriptions which are dependent on the authentication status that you can use. So let's call Flexible Sync configuration. In Flexible Sync configuration, we should be able to pass initial subscriptions. Now, hold on a second. If you do not see initial subscriptions over here, which you may not, then this means that we should move your Realm database version from 12.0.0 to 12.1.0. So how do we do that? Well, I've already done that, but you can go to File, Packages, and select Update to Latest Package Versions. Make sure you do that. If you do not do that, then you will not get initial subscriptions options when you are creating Flexible Sync. So now I can go back over here and I can try to write it again. You can see that since I am running on 12.1.0, I can see initial subscriptions, which is great. All right. For the initial subscriptions, we are going to get access to the subscriptions. And the main benefit that you're going to get from performing or setting up initial subscriptions will be that when your application is starting for the first time, it will already have those subscriptions. So we're already setting up that what data we want to sync to the cloud and what data we want to pull down from the cloud. Before setting up the subscription, it's always a good idea to check if the subscription already exists or not. If you try to create a subscription that already exists, then, well, it's not going to work. It's actually going to give you an error. So the subscription we are creating, and you can use any name you want, I'm just going to go ahead and create a subscription called All Tasks, which means that this subscription is going to allow me to download all the tasks from the cloud and also sync, meaning using my local sync, upload all the cloud, the stuff to the cloud. All right. Okay, so if it exists, then go ahead and not do anything. If it doesn't exist, then we can go ahead and create a subscription by creating subscription.append, and the subscription will be a query subscription on a particular type called name, and then we will provide the name of the subscription, which is All Tasks. There we go. Rerun on open, meaning do we want to rerun the subscription on open? We will perform false over here. If I perform false, then it will not run. All right. If you perform true, then the subscription will at least try to run. So it depends what kind of app that you're building. I'm just going to go ahead and say, yeah, sure, true, rerun it. That's fine if you want to. Okay. And we'll see how that behaves. Now, another thing to note over here is that the Flexible Sync configuration is actually returning you something. It is returning you configuration, which is really not going anywhere. So let's go ahead and add on line number 17 a variable configuration, which is going to be keeping track of the configuration, which our Flexible Sync configuration is going to be returning us. There we go. And finally, what we want to do is to create a realm object. Now, this realm object is very different from the realm object that you created in the previous videos, previous video that I did on basics of realm, because this realm object is the realm object which is configured with the Flexible Sync configuration. So whenever you write something to it, it's going to be writing it to the cloud. So there we go. On line number 15, I'm creating a realm object. And now we can try to initialize it. Try await realm. We can go ahead and pass in the configuration, which will be configuration. Download before open, we will say always. So always download it before opening it, meaning downloading the database before opening it. And this is going to set up our application for using the flexible sync. This is the part that is setting up the flexible sync with a subscription, and subscriptions are mandatory. So subscription over here, that the only subscription we are adding right now is basically saying that I want to get all the tasks from my database and I want to sync it back down to my local database, which is stored on the device. Great. Okay, so that's good. Now let's go back to the TodoList app, the main file where we are starting everything. And over here, we are going to just inject different things to the environment variables. So I'm going to go ahead and create a state object, private var realm manager, realm manager.shared. Okay, great. Next up, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and basically inject some stuff. So I'm going to go ahead over here, and first of all, I'm going to just wrap this with a VStack. And now I can go ahead and check for the configuration. So we'll get the configuration equals to realm manager.configuration. And we're also going to get realm from realm manager.realm. And if this is the case, then yeah, we will create the content view. And not only create the content view, but we will inject different things to the content view, like realm configuration with the value configuration. And we will inject another thing, which is realm, which will be the value realm. So we can access it in the content view and we can access it in the children of the content view. In the VStack, let's go to the VStack, we can go ahead and perform a particular task. And that task would be to call the realm manager.initialize. Okay. So this means that when we call realm manager.initialize, and since those properties that we are setting up, which includes the configuration, which includes realm, they are using the publish modifier or property wrapper. Whenever these properties are actually going to be set up, then the view is going to render again, and then at that time we will inject the values. Great. Now our next step would be to move on to the actual content view, which is going to allow us to add a brand new task to our database. Now, before implementing our user interface, one of the things we can do is we can tell our realm on the cloud that this is a new schema that we have created, new object that we have created, new model that we have created, and please use that model to create a schema for the database. So how can we do that? Well, there are multiple ways of doing that. We can always go to our dashboard, click on the schema, and then add a schema manually. Now, I don't really want to do that. I just want to create the schema automatically based on the model that I have created in my iOS application. In order for that to work, we will go to Device Sync and we will enable development mode. The development mode basically says that all the models that you have in your iOS application, they will be used to create the schema on our realm database. So I'm going to go ahead and enable this. And you can see that which database do you want to use. Now, I have already created a My Task database, but if you want to create, you can say New Database also. Let's go ahead and click New Database. It doesn't really matter. We can just call it TaskDB. Great. And we will say OK. So now we have turned on the development mode, meaning that once we run our application, our models, and the only model that we have is a task model, will be used to create a schema for our database. Make sure to click Save. Save changes. Perfect. Now let's go back to our application, and I'm just going to go ahead and run the application. If you have already installed the application on your iOS simulator, make sure to delete it, and now we can run it. When you run the application, your task model with all of these properties is sent to the server on the cloud, and we should be able to see the schema being generated. And there we go. You can see the TaskDB contains one particular item. And if you click on it, you can see that our model has now been translated into a schema that we can use. We have all of those properties that we were creating. We have the ID, title, is completed, priority. So instead of writing these things by hand, we use the development mode feature, and the development mode looked at our iOS application, found all the different models, and then use those models to create a schema for our application. Pretty cool, right? Now, since we're done with creating the schema, we can go ahead and turn development mode off. We will say just close, that's fine, and also go to the device sync to make sure that the development mode is actually off. There we go. Perfect. Now we can go back to our content view and start implementing the application. Let's go ahead and jump into our content view. This is where we will start planning our interface and also displaying the list of tasks, saving the task, and all that stuff. Great. Okay. So we should probably start with creating a navigation view. So I'm going to go ahead and create a navigation view. And inside the navigation view, I'm going to go ahead and add a VStack. In order to add a task, we need a couple of different controls. We need a text field where you can type in a particular task. So let's go ahead and add a text field. Whenever we will write something in a text field, it is going to go to a property called task name, which doesn't really exist. So let's go ahead and create task name also. Now, if you update your preview, you should be able to see the text field. Let me go ahead and run the app. And the text field is in the center. Great. Let's add a little bit more padding to our view stack. Next, we want to go and display all the different priorities in a segmented control. So I'm going to go ahead and add a picker. And whenever you select something in the picker, it is going to be populating the priority property. We're also able to go through all the cases for picker, and this is because we have set our priority to be case iterable, meaning you can iterate through these cases. And now you can see that apart from the text field, we are also displaying the different priorities, low, medium, and high. And since the initial value of the priority is medium, that is the one that is being selected. Next up, we're going to go ahead and add a button. We will make sure that when we're adding a button, you can see that we have different overloads over here. You can use any one that you want. I'm just going to use the one where I can specify a label, which is save, and I can also specify a maximum width of the label, which I can just put infinity. We will also use the button style to be border prominent, but it is kind of up to you, however you want to create the button. Perfect. We're inside the VStack. If I go ahead and add a spacer, it's going to push everything on the top. We can also go ahead and add some sort of a navigation title so that we know that we're on the task page. Now, when we click the button, we want to save that particular task. How would we save that particular task? Well, we can create a task by saying task equals to task. Next, we can go ahead and set the property of task name to be task name coming from the text box. After that, we can set the priority to be priority coming from the segmented control. And now we should be able to save the task. In order to save the task, we are going to get access to the task, which is of type results of task. These are the functions or helper functions that are provided by Realm if you are working with SwiftUI. In order to use results, we will have to import Realm Swift. So let's go ahead and import Realm Swift. Great. Let's go ahead and build our application before we proceed. The next thing we want to do after the build is completed, we want to simply save it. So I'm going to say task.append a particular value, and that value is task. And after setting that up, we can also go ahead and reset our task text box value to be empty. Since we have configured Realm to use the flexible sync, this is going to sync our task up to the cloud, and it will be persisted in the cloud. In order to see that, let's go ahead and try to run our application. We can see our interface. Let's go ahead and add a task. This can be any task that you want. I'm just going to say mow the lawn. And I will set the priority to be high. Next, I'm going to save it. At this point, it didn't really give any indication that the task has been saved or not. But we have access to our Realm database. We can always go and check if the task is stored over there or not. Let's go back. And let's click on Atlas. You can see that we can see our cluster marked with cluster 0, and we can see the option of Browse Collections. Let's go to Browse Collections. Since this is our first task that we have stored, sometimes it can take a little bit of time for the collection to appear. But this time you can see it's pretty fast. We can definitely see our collection with the new task mow the lawn being saved. So congratulations, we have actually saved a task from our iOS SwiftUI application all the way to the cloud database that is hosted using Atlas and using Realm Flexible Sync. Let's go ahead and add another task. Let's go ahead and run the application. And another task I'm going to add is feed the rabbit. And I will put it at low because I just fed my rabbit, so low is fine. Next, in order to refresh it, click the refresh button and feed the rabbit. It is also stored on the MongoDB Atlas using our Flex configuration. Great. Our next step would be to display all these tasks. So let's go ahead and work on that. For displaying the tasks, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new view and put it inside the views folder. Let's go ahead and create a view, and we will call it TodoList view. The purpose of the TodoList view is to simply display all the tasks. In the to-do list view, we are going to get access to the task results. There we go. And for that, we will need to import Realm Swift. Now we can iterate through the task and display all the tasks. Let's go ahead and do that. We can use a list task. We will get access to the task, and then we can display task.title. Currently, we are not using to-do list view. So let's go back to the content view, and we will make sure that somewhere we are using the to-do list view, so we are displaying it. So we'll move over here above the spacer and use to-do list view. Great. Let's go ahead and run the application. And now when we run the application, well, we see a couple of different things. We see that it is displaying 2 times feed the rabbit. And we need to see that why is it doing that. It's probably because we didn't really use the correct identifier. So if we go back to our to-do list view, we can tell it that we will be using a particular identifier. Let's go ahead and see if we use the ID property, which in this case is _ID. _ID is the primary key, and it will be different for each record that you will save. With that in mind, let's go ahead and run the application again. And now you can see that we are displaying mow the lawn and feed the rabbit. Great. What about if I go ahead and add another task? Let's say clean the car and save it. You can see that the task is immediately being displayed. Not only that, but the task is also saved in our cloud database. Great. Now, if we are creating a to-do list application, we want to put some checkboxes over here. Not only that, we want to create a section for pending task and also completed task. So how can we do that? The first thing we need to do is we need to create what will the sections look like. So I'm going to go ahead and create an enum called sections, which will have pending section and completed section. Next, I just want to display the sections. So instead of using the list, I'm going to go ahead and start using for each. I will loop through sections.allCases, and we can do that because the sections is using case iterable, meaning I can iterate over the cases. ID, we will just use self, and we will get access to the section. For each section, we are going to go ahead and use the section element to create a section. You can see that it comes with several different overloads. We're going to use the one that comes with the content and the header. So what will be the content of the section? Well, this will be the actual task. So let's just go ahead and put over here task. And the header of the section will be the actual header that you want to display for the section, which can be section.raw value, and the raw value will be pending or completed. Let's go ahead and run the application. If you run the application, you will see that it's no longer going to display mow the lawn, feed the rabbit, clean the car, but it should display our task. You can see that it also comes with this nice accordion that we can use. But if you don't want to show that, simply go ahead and change your list to plain style. Let's go ahead and do that. We will go ahead and say list style, plain. After doing that change, let's go ahead and run the application. Still, you will see that the section is only displaying the section, and the task is just a task, and for completed, also just a task. What if I wanted to display a list of items? How would I do that? Well, let's go ahead and run a for each loop inside a section. We will go over the task. Basically the same exact code that we implemented earlier on. We will get access to the task, and we're just going to go ahead and display task.title. Let's go ahead and run it. Now, if we run this application, you will see that for both pending and the completed, it is showing me all the tasks. Well, all the tasks, mow the lawn, feed the rabbit, and clean the car cannot be pending or completed. They must have only one state. Either they're completed or they're not. If they're not completed, then they're pending. If they're completed, then they should come under completed. So we need to fix that part. Apart from fixing that part, we also need to make sure that we're not displaying or creating our cell right inside our to-do list view. Maybe we should take a look at how we can differentiate these tasks, meaning how we can display the cell somewhat differently. So let's go ahead and create another view. And this view, we will call it task cell view. The task cell view will be responsible for displaying the data for just one cell, and that's it. So now the question is, well, what should we display over here? Should we use a horizontal stack or a vertical stack? Well, we want to display a checkbox, then some sort of a label, and maybe then the priority. So looks like it should be a horizontal stack. In order to display the task, someone should be passing in the task also. So we will make sure that somebody is passing in the task. Next up, we can display the name of the task using a simple text control. Great. Since we're not really using the previews, we can remove that. This is our task cell view, and we can start using it now. So instead of a text view, we can simply use a task cell view, passing in the task. The result will not really be any different, since inside the task cell view, we are only displaying a text label. So if I run this application right now, it's going to be appearing exactly the same. Now we need to figure out that how we can display checkboxes right next to the task. You can use the checkboxes, or you can display the checkboxes by simply using a system name and providing in the system name for a San Francisco symbol, which in this case can be square. If you're not aware of the name, you can always download the San Francisco Symbols application, SF Symbols, and that will allow you to use check marks on any image that you want. If I simply search for square, you can see all these things comes up. And over here, you can find the square that you want to use, which we're using this one. San Francisco Symbols is available on the Apple website. If you simply search for San Francisco Symbols, you can download it for completely free. Making that change, let's go ahead and run this. If we run this, we should be able to see the image on the left-hand side and the title of the task on the right-hand side. You can see it's already looking pretty good. What about the priority? Well, we can display priority probably over here, and we can say task.priority.raw value, which will be a text value. For priority, we can also give it a padding, some sort of a custom padding, and we can also color the priority based on the priority level. For that, we're going to call the function priority background. Now, I don't really have that function right now, so let's go ahead and implement it. It's a pretty simple function, as you'll see. The priority background function takes in a priority, and based on the priority, like low, it's going to return gray color. For medium, it's going to return orange, and for high, it's going to return red color. And that's pretty much it. Let's also go ahead and add a spacer, so the priority is kind of like on the right-hand side. Let's go ahead and run the application. Now, when we run our application, we should be able to see the square San Francisco symbol, the title, and the priority. Wow, it's actually looking really nice. None of the checkboxes are functional right now. You can try to check them, but nothing is going to happen. The other thing you can already see is all the items, mow the lawn, feed the rabbit, clean the car, are appearing in both the pending as well as the completed. This is a pretty big problem, so we need to solve it immediately. Let's go ahead and jump into our to-do list view. In the to-do list view, we can go ahead and create a particular property which is going to return us all the pending tasks. We're going to make sure that it is returning us everything where this completed is false. In the same way, we can go ahead and return create another property called completed task, where it's going to return us all the different tasks where the is completed is true. Next, we're going to go into the section and create another property or variable called filtered task. Filtered task will pick either pending or completed based on the section. If the section is pending, then we will select pending task, or else we will select completed task. Well, that's pretty cool. Also, if the filtered task is completely empty, maybe there are no completed tasks or there are no pending tasks, then we can simply go ahead and display no tasks. Or you can write your own custom message if you want to. Finally, we can replace task with filtered task, so that the filtered task will only display the task based on the section. If it's pending, then pending task. If it's completed, then completed task. Let's go ahead and build it. Once it is built, we are able to run it now. Now when I run it, you can see a little bit different approach. You can see that under the pending task or pending heading, we only see all the tasks because all the tasks are actually pending. Under completed, we see nothing. That's pretty cool. What about if I go into my application and try to change one of these tasks? Let's say mow the lawn. Instead of false, I'll do true. And then I will press the update button. Now, immediately, you can see that mow the lawn is now moved into completed task. So, looks like that our code is working as expected, and it is differentiating between the pending task as well as the completed task. That's really good. But we need to control marking from pending to completed, completed to pending using a checkbox. So, how can we do that? Let's go back to our task cell view. The task cell view, as you can see, is displaying just square. But we can make sure that it is displaying square or some other image based on the task that is completed. If it is completed, then you should probably show something else, like checkmark.square. Else, you show just the square. Wow, that's actually a good idea. Let's go ahead and run this. This means that the image will be replaced either by checkmark.square if it is completed, or simply square. And we can see the effect right there. Since mow the lawn is actually completed task, where task.isCompleted is true, we're displaying the checkmark.squared symbol. While the other tasks, where the feed the rabbit and clean the car are not completed, they are isCompleted false, we show the normal square. We're in the right direction. The next thing we need to do is to perform a tap gesture. So when we click on the image, we should be able to go ahead and actually get that task and update it. One of the ways that we can do that is by writing using realm. We can access to the realm, since we have already put it in the environment variable, by simply saying environment. What we're looking for is a realm, and getting access to realm. Next, we are going to go ahead and get access to the task to update. So in this case, we can use realm.object, and we are looking for the object of type task.self with the primary key, which is task._id. And now we can try to update. Realm.write and task to update .isCompleted.toggle. This is going to allow us to update an existing task. Let's go ahead and run this and see that if we can use the checkboxes to mark the task from not completed to completed. I'm going to go ahead and mark the task feed the cat to be completed. Wow, feed the cat is now automatically moved to completed. Does it even update our status in the database? Let's go back over here and make sure to refresh. We're looking for feed the rabbit. Feed the rabbit, as you can see, is marked with true. This means the task has been updated successfully. We can do the same thing with clean the car, and now automatically the pending is showing no task. What about if I uncheck this? If I uncheck feed the rabbit, it automatically moves to the pending task. And same with clean the car. This means feed the rabbit, clean the car are no longer completed. They're pending. So isCompleted should be false. This is correct, and this is also correct. Perfect. The remaining part that we need to do is deleting a task. When I swipe over here right to left, I don't even see a delete button. So now the question is, well, how do we delete a particular task from a particular section that it is displayed in? For deleting a task, let's go back to the TodoList view. Now inside TodoList view, we are running this particular loop that displays all the task cell views. And since we are using a for each, we can actually attach an onDelete on it. OnDelete. We will get access to the index set. Now, inside over here on onDelete, what we want to do is we want to get access to the filtered task. If I go ahead and type filter task, I already have access to whatever the tasks are filtered, so that's good. Next up, we can go to indexSet.forEach, running a loop, get an index, and then based on the filter task, we are going to pass in the index to get the actual task. After that, we need to check if that particular task exists in the database or not. We can try to get that task by calling realm.object of a type, which is task.self, and for a primary key, which is task ID. We will go ahead and perform a task to delete, else we will simply go ahead and return. Great. Next, we need to delete the task. All right. So once we get the particular task, let's go ahead and first find out it's complaining. It's complaining because we don't have anything called realm. So we need to find out how to get realm. Okay. This can easily be done because we have already put it inside the environment. So let's go back on the top and add realm. Okay, so now hopefully we have tasks that we want to delete. Great. We can use task array dot remove a particular task, which in this case is task to delete, and we can delete that. Now at this point you're wondering, well, why did we even get tasks to delete? Why can't we just do it from over here? The reason that we wanted to get tasks to delete like this is that so it will be part of the realm. And if I try to delete this particular task, it's not really going to allow me because this task might be part of something else, meaning some other realm environment. All right. Or this particular task may have used a different realm to be created, part of that realm context. So that's why we have to use our own realm context to fetch the task and then delete it. With that, let's go ahead and run the application and see if we can delete our task or not. There we go. At least we can see the delete button, so that's good. Okay, it has been deleted. This means that it should have been deleted from the cloud also. Let's go back to the cloud and refresh it. And yes, it is deleted. Now we only see 2 tasks instead of 3. Let's go ahead and delete mow the lawn. And you'll see that that particular task is also deleted. Perfect. So it looks like our delete operation is working correctly. One other thing that we want to add to our task is to attach some notes to it. So cleaning the car, I might have some action items on what should I have to do to clean the car. Well, I need to, first make sure that I have the hose to clean the car. Then I should have the car cleaning liquid to clean the car and some sort of a disposable cloths so I can use it to clean the car, like action items. And we will store those action items in our notes. So if you want to do this one-to-many relationship with each task can have multiple nodes, we need to create the model for nodes. So let's go ahead and do that first. So in order to represent a node, I'm just going to go ahead and add a brand new Swift file, and we will call it note. First, we will import realm Swift, and now we can go ahead and start creating our class. Note, which is using the realm Swift object and conforming to identifiable. You can persist anything you want in the note, but I'm just going to start with an ID and the text associated with the note. Great. We still have to go to the task and update the relationship between the note and the task. One task can have multiple nodes. So I'm going to go ahead and create another property called persisted var nodes, which will be a list of note, and it will be list of note. There we go. Let's go ahead and build it. After doing that, we still need to update our subscriptions because now, apart from getting or subscribing to the all task, we also need to get nodes. So right over here in the if check, we are going to do another if let, and we are going to first of all check for a subscription with a name all nodes. If that particular subscription already exists, then we are not going to create it. If it doesn't exist, then just like all nodes, we are going to add a subscription. Just like all tasks, we're going to add a subscription to all nodes. Now, in order for this particular code to run, we have to update our app, which for us locally means that we have to delete the app and run it again. Let's go back to our code and remove the app. We will do a fresh install after we are adding a new subscription, and we're also adding a brand new note model. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so a couple of different things going on over here. You can see it's saying invalid schema changes, non-breaking schema, added schema to node, schema changes restricted when developer mode is disabled. So we need to first check on our dashboard that if the developer mode is disabled or not. Let me go over to Realm and check that out. Let's go to device sync. And you can see that the developer mode is currently off. Since we have added new schema changes to the task as well as a new model, which is a task model, we will have to enable developer mode. Before I do that, let's go ahead and remove this app again and enable developer mode. We will enable the developer mode. TaskDB is fine. That is our database. Let's click OK. Now our developer mode is turned on. Let's make sure to save the changes. Once the developer mode is turned on, it's going to look at our models in our local iOS application, and it's going to update our schemas. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, app is working fine. That's great. But what we want to do is to go back to the dashboard and check out the schema. Now you can see magically that the node schema is also appearing alongside with the task schema. If you look at the task schema, that has also been updated to add a nodes property, which is of type array, and the items will be holding the object ID, kind of like a unique ID for each node. This is great. Everything looks to be working fine. Our next step would be to allow the user to save a particular note. Now, if we go back to our task list, so this is our task list, you can see that inside this task list, we're not really doing much. I mean, yes, you can see all the tasks, but how do we go about adding a particular note to a task? Now, in our application, what we want to do is we want to click or tap on one of the tasks, and then we should be able to see or add notes to that particular task. Let's go to Task Cell View. Right now in the Task Cell View, what we're looking at is just a horizontal stack. Instead of that, how about we create a navigation link? And this navigation link will consist of a particular title as well as the destination. So let's go and add the destination. We'll just call it Notes View for now. For the label, we're just going to go ahead and put all the stuff that we have done before into the label. This means that this is what the user will actually see, which is pretty much the same thing as they were seeing last time. If I go ahead and run this right now, you will see that we'll be able to click or tap on a particular task and then display the notes view. This is great. But currently, we don't really have any ability to add a new note. For this, we're going to go ahead and create a new SwiftUI view, and we will call it Notes View. Inside Notes View, we're going to go ahead and add the capability of adding notes. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll use a VStack. We can also look at the canvas, which will help us design our application. We will need a couple of different things. We will need a state, so we can put all the notes in. There we go. We will need a text box where we can write the note. This can also be a text view if you're looking for multi-line notes. Next, we will need a button that will allow us to save a note. So we'll create a button and we will simply say save a note. Next, inside the save button, we can try to create a note. But before we do that, we will get access to the observe realm object. So let's go ahead and add that. This means that if you are adding a particular note, you must send in an observe realm object. So how do we send in an observe realm object? Well, from your task cell view, if we are displaying information right over here, if we are displaying the notes view, you can see that we must pass in the task, which is already passed to us, by the way. So we can just pass that task further down to the notes view. Observe realm object is part of realm Swift. So let's go ahead and import that. And we need to make sure that we are passing something over here. So let's go ahead and create that. Great. Once a button is actually pressed, we need to create a note, and then we need to create or assign the text coming from the text box. Finally, we can add that particular notes to our selected task and append it as a note. Let's also go ahead and clear the text box by setting the note text to be empty. Great. But what about displaying the notes? Yes, let's go ahead and work on displaying the notes now. We will display the notes in a list. We will go through each of the item of task.notes.indices. Why are we using indices? Well, the reason is that we want to also display some sort of a numbering to our notes, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. We will get the index. Once we get the index, we can actually get access to the note by simply saying task.notes, providing the index. Next up, we will write the code to simply display the note as well as a number. You can see that we are displaying index plus 1. We're passing in the frame and clipping the rectangle so that it is rounded. Let's go ahead and save it. And after saving it, we can try to run our application. Currently, we don't really have any notes, so it may not appear anything. But if I want to enter a note, maybe I can say buy the cleaning liquid and save a note. Cleaning liquid and save a note. There we go. It actually appears really nice. Find hose, because if you're cleaning a car, you probably might need a hose. And there we go. We have added 2 notes. What about in the database? Are these notes going and forming in the database? Well, let's go and select task and go to the Atlas link over here on the top. We should be able to see our database by selecting Browse Collections. Now we can see 2 different collections. We can see Note and we can see Task. If you click on Task, you can even see that the notes are actually part of an array. And if I open this up, it simply refers to the object ID of that particular note. If I open up the note, it will tell you the ID as well as the text. Buy the cleaning liquid and find the hose. Great. Looks like it's working correctly. Let's go back and add one more feature to our application. This will be deleting notes. In order to delete, we can simply go ahead and call onDelete, and we can call task.remove or task.notes.remove. This is automatically going to find the actual note using the index that you want to remove, and it will simply remove it. Also, let's go ahead and give this a plain. Notes are displayed in plain. And we will probably go ahead and give it some sort of a title also. So let's go ahead and see if we can put a title, the navigation bar title, and we will say task.title. For our VStack, we can also add a bit of a padding. Let's go ahead and run our application and see that if we can add multiple nodes to our task, and can we even delete our nodes. Let's go ahead and add another task, feed the rabbit. We will put it as high. We can mark this completed or incomplete. That's great. We can also go to the feed the rabbit and add a note by food. Great. Clean container. Perfect. Looks like it's working great. What about if we want to delete a note? Well, we can swipe and we can delete a note also. That will be deleted from the database also. One other thing that we want to complete now is ability to delete a particular task and all the associated nodes belonging to that task. That's called a cascading delete, and right now we have not implemented it. Let's go back to the to-do list view. In the to-do list, you can see that we are actually removing a particular task. But before removing all the tasks, we should also do something else, like delete all nodes of a selected task. This means that we're trying to delete all the children of the task before we delete the task altogether. If we delete a task without removing the children first, then what will happen is that those nodes will never be deleted. For note in task to delete dot nodes, we can go ahead and try to delete it, saying realm dot write and realm dot delete a particular object, which in this case is a note. Great. Now let's go ahead and run our application. And we will try to add some nodes. Let's see how many nodes that the feed the rabbit has. Let's go ahead and add some more. Clean the container. Prepare hay. And so on. We have added multiple nodes for our task, feed the rabbit. Let's go back and delete this particular task. Great. Now let's go back to our database and try to refresh the nodes as well as the task. You can see the task feed the rabbit is now gone. Alongside with that also, the nodes associated with that task are also gone. That is because we have written our code to delete the children first before deleting the parent. So this is it. This is the complete application which you have constructed, which uses iOS application using SwiftUI as a UI framework, and it stores all the information in the cloud. This is great because now, since it is stored in a cloud, you can build a Flutter application, or you can even build a React web application or any kind of application that is supported and try to consume the same exact data. I really hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial, and make sure to download the attached resources. Thank you so much.